In 1925, Paris had over 500 miles of tramways. Pretty much every major street had a line running through it. Every other major city in the country had extensive systems too, and even some smaller towns and villages saw tramways cutting across them. But in just 20 years, they were all gone. Now, 100 years later, French trams have made a comeback, and their rise might even help other countries build their own systems. This video is going to cover just how extensive this new tram network is. But before we do that, we have to understand why France tore down their original trams. From 1945 to 1975, France experienced a giant economic boom. Cities and suburbs grew rapidly, industrial production expanded, and people suddenly had a lot more money. With this growth came a huge increase in car ownership. Trams were out, and brands like Renault, Peugeot, and Citroën were in. But this trend didn't last. The world was changing. The 1970s were a time of economic shock for the entire world. France was heavily reliant on oil imports to meet its domestic industry and energy needs. In 1973 and 1979, wars and oil crises in the Middle East caused prices to quadruple. France, being France, responded to these issues their own unique way. To meet the changing economics and energy crises, the French developed 3 distinct technologies throughout the 70s and doubled down on them in the following decades. The first, nuclear energy. In the early 1970s, France imported around 70% of its energy, most of it being oil. When prices exploded, the government responded with the Mesmer Plan. It directed the national utility, the EDF, to overhaul the country's energy system through nuclear power. To bring local governments on board, the state introduced the taxe professionnelle, a levy that sent a portion of each plant's revenue directly to its host town. For mayors, that meant new schools, paved roads, and a stronger tax base. All of these policies combined to help create one of the fastest nuclear buildouts ever. Between 1975 and 1985, France built over 50 new nuclear reactors. By the mid-1980s, more than 70% of the country's electricity came from nuclear power. This blend of top-down control and decentralized incentives was also used to push the second major technology initiative from this time period: high-speed rail. With the push for the national grid to be fueled by nuclear power and the fluctuating cost of oil, the French National Rail Company, SNCF, decided to focus their high-speed rail ambitions away from fossil fuels and towards electrified trains. In 1976, construction of the first high-speed rail line began between Paris and Lyon. 5 years later, it opened. In the first 10 months, 10 million passengers used the route. 40 years later, every major city in the country is connected by lines allowing for travel at above 190 miles an hour. Both the nuclear push and high-speed rail push were born from state-level decisions and regional coordination. But the third push came from local-level initiatives. Cities had become polluted, traffic jammed, and dependent on oil. The Minister of Transport created a national contest. It called upon a number of major cities to develop plans promoting tramways as a way to decrease the need for cars. However, of the cities invited to take part in this national contest, none decided to participate. Trams were seen as old technology. The original streetcars, or trams, that many cities had at the beginning of the century were dismantled in part because the systems were inefficient. They shared traffic with all other forms of transport, like cars, trucks, and buses. But one city not part of the original national contest decided to throw its hat into the ring. Nantes, in the west of France, decided to explore the idea of creating a modern tramway. It would be grade separated, and the design of the trams would be nothing like the original streetcars of the early part of the century. In 1985, the first line opened. Then, in 1987, in Grenoble, on the other side of the country, their tramway opened too. Both of these systems served as the catalyst for the rest of the country. The vehicles were modern, the lines served a large number of commuters, and they didn't need to interact with other road traffic. Tram networks cost 2 to 4 times less to build than heavier systems like metros, and using a combination of state-level funds and local taxes, the cities could get a line up and running in as little as 5 years. Using the model pioneered by Nantes and Grenoble, along with the ability to use the local tax base to fund transport infrastructure, mayors and municipalities in cities all over the country decided to create their own networks. Between 1985 and 2025, almost every city above 200,000 residents has built their own system. In larger cities like Lyon, the tram serves as support to the metro system. Smaller cities have built just 1 or 2 lines to help interconnect areas like train stations, city centers, and universities. Paris, being France's biggest city, has an extensive and growing network itself. The first line helped connect northern suburbs, but since that line opened in 1992, the capital region's system has grown to be almost 200 kilometers long. In total, over the last 40 years, France has built 27 new tram systems. Compare that to the UK, which in the same span of time has opened just 6. Tram system buildouts in France have benefited from lower building costs compared to systems in other parts of the world. Edinburgh's tram system, which was planned and built between 2004 and 2014, ended up costing over €1 billion. Compare that to the Dijon tramway, which has a similar length. Its total cost was well under half that. France's tram renaissance has benefited from a lot of complementary factors. An initial push for innovation by local governments, incentives, and then national support, along with a standardized process and cost-cutting measures. Now, millions of people use this mode across the country, helping give people a solid transport option and helping cities to cut back on traffic and pollution.